Hi, everyone. Lately, I've been noticing a shared feelings in conversation with friends, clients, and even strangers. There's no hiding well beyond the what on earth is going on stage, and people are paralyzed about what to do about it. Actually, it's been like that for a while now. Politics feel chaotic, institutions feel shaky. Every news cycle seems crazier than the last one. Some notice it just the last few months, some the last 5 years. And others actually register it all their lives and trace it to time beyond the history that we know. And especially now, people are overtly being pushed into arguing about the smallest differences on modern town square that is the internet and social media, shouting their emotions, their opinions, and reacting to what they're being shown. Meanwhile, the larger landscape, just underneath us, shifting beyond recognition. And when the world starts feeling upside down like this, the question becomes, how do you keep yourself together while everything around you is changing? That's what I want to talk about today. One thing I've been experimenting with lately, it's something very simple. Instead of trying to solve the entire world, I've been doubling down on small, tangible things in everyday life. For example, recently I hosted dumping clubs a few times with neighbors and friends. Drafted a pair of pants from scratch just to reclaim my sewing skill. I used to sew, I made a lot of bags, a lot of very practical things, and my sewing machines has been put away for quite a few years. And I've been building detailed clearing templates to help surface hidden factors that are affecting people energetically, especially noticing people are just looping the same narrative, like as if they're under a spell. But I've been really curious about this. What actually ignite changes? And more importantly, help sustain it. Because starting something new is not that hard. We all have that shiny object syndrome, something exciting, you buy a lot of toys and gears and accessories and dive into it. But creating through the momentum for the change to hold, for you to sustain it, to go through the steps of like falling down, the steps of like doesn't work out is how you, and the repetitions, the repeat over and over that you have to sustain it so that you can actually get good. That's where things get interesting. And this also brings me to something that I've noticed again and again in my personal work. We live in a time where people have more psychological insight than ever before. There are entire industry built around understanding ourselves, like therapy, self-help books, journaling practice, all the types of trauma work. And I think lately it went from nervous system regulation, trauma-informed practices, and now it's fascia. People can explain their patterns pretty clearly sometimes. They know why they react a certain way, and they know where their emotion triggers comes from. And they can certainly trace certain behaviors back to childhood experiences. And yet, people can have tremendous insight into themselves and still repeat the same patterns, oftentimes for decades. The understanding is there, but the changes doesn't always follow. And that gap's always fascinated me. Because it suggests that insight and change are not the same thing. Insight absolutely has value. Sometimes surfacing those insight alone can soften the stuckness that we're holding those patterns. It can explain the past, it can name the emotions that were previously confusing, it can clarify its narrative about what happens in our lives. It certainly satisfied our mind, our intellect of wanting to know. Sometimes it even brings a sense of compassion for ourselves and for others. But insight alone doesn't necessarily change the condition that keeps the patterns running. It doesn't automatically change the environment that we move through, that keeping those patterns stuck. It doesn't dissolve the expectations it places on us. And we easily just dissolve and drop into those old roles that actually keeping the patterns there. It certainly doesn't change when the rhythm of our lives, the busyness, the chaoticness, the way that the ebbs and flows or the lack of rest, the lack of really tending to ourselves that we often operate under. You can fully understand a pattern and still find yourself living inside it because the structure that hold the patterns in place is still active. In my experience, pattern persists because something in the present is still maintaining them, often quietly, sometimes invisibly. A few examples I see often. People are still carrying inherited roles in families, or they're living in environments that constantly reinforce certain behaviors. Sometimes there are obligations or expectations that remain invisible but still binding. And sometimes the internal signal, like the way someone senses their own directions, it's simply too noisy. From the outside, this can look like a lack of willpower or resistance. But most of the time, the systems, it's just